So after 1 month with the Canon EOS R, I'm finally ready to start talking about the camera and just sharing everything I can in regards to what I like about the camera, what I dislike, how it compares to other cameras that I've used in the past, as well as plenty of photos that I've made with it. In the last month, I've shot 2 weddings, 3 engagement sessions, and 1 family session with this camera, plus plenty of personal photos as well, obviously. It's just given me a lot of really good practical, real-world use with the camera, so that way I can kind of talk about that versus, renting a camera for a few days and just taking some test shots. I've actually used this for professional work and personal work for a month now, so that's what I really want to focus on with this review. You already know the specs. The specs are all over every video and article out there. I want to focus on real-world use so that hopefully that will help you decide whether this might be a good fit for you. I'm breaking this whole video up and organizing all of my thoughts because I have a lot of them. I'm organizing and breaking everything up as much as I possibly can, so if there's anything in particular that you want to know about, or if you want to skip ahead, I'm going to pin a comment down below with all the timestamps for each individual section, so if you want to skip ahead, just feel free to do so. If this is your first time ever seeing me or my channel, I'll give you a little bit of background information just to kind of give you some context. So this is the very first Canon camera I've ever owned in the last 15 years, film or digital. My very first digital SLR was the Nikon D60 many years ago, and I stuck with that all the way through to the D750, and I shot some mirrorless in there for personal work, always with Fuji. When the original X100 came out, I immediately picked that up and just fell in love with that camera. Whenever I decided to go mirrorless for my professional work, I went to Fuji, and I've owned pretty much every Fuji camera out there since the original X100, all the way up to the X-T3, which I was just previously using before this. Last year, there was a brief stint of about 6 months where I tried Sony out, and I had the A7 III, and it just wasn't really for me, so I went right back to Fuji. But about a month ago, I decided to just take a gamble and took all of my Fuji gear, and I got rid of all of it for the Canon EOS R with the 50mm f1.2 and the 24-105 f4 kit lens. And honestly, I wish I would have done that a lot sooner. Every time I pick up this camera, I'm just excited to shoot with it. I'm just happy. I'm happy with the results for sure. The image quality is incredible. With this sensor and these lenses combined, it's far better in terms of image quality than I was ever expecting, to be completely honest. But just shooting the camera in general, I just really enjoy using it. And even, after shooting a wedding all day, the next day, usually the last thing I want to do is go pick up my digital camera that I shot with all day long for work the day before. I'm primarily, shooting film for my personal work. That's where I started with photography. That's where a lot of people here that have been following this channel, that's why you follow it, is because I talk a lot about film, and that's, really where my passion lies, I think, in photography, is in the personal work. But even after shooting a long wedding day, the following day, I find myself just carrying this camera around because I'm just wanting to use it all the time, and that's honestly something I never expected. But let's talk about some of the things that really drew me to the camera in the first place, and number one, I'm sure a lot of you are probably tired of hearing people talk about this, but the flip out screen. For someone like me who talks to the camera all the time for my YouTube channel, the convenience of this really does make a big difference. And this is the very first time I've ever had a camera with a flip out screen like this, so now I just feel like I've been missing out all these years. And even for photos too, I find it to be useful, for getting lower shots and things like that. I never really saw myself using it. I always just kind of thought it's probably just a gimmick, but it's actually really usable. And even using the touchscreen on the LCD itself, that's really surprised me. Normally, I disable the touchscreen functionality on all my digital cameras. If you've seen me review a lot of the Fuji cameras, that's always something I talk about because it just never really feels intuitive or responsive. This thing just feels like I'm using my iPhone. Like, the touchscreen is so quick and so accurate, and I can just navigate through the menus, which Canon menus, that's another thing. They're super easy to use, and I really like that about it. But just using the touchscreen, interacting with the camera, and changing settings, it's super intuitive. And even whenever you're looking through the camera, there's no, joystick or anything like that to move your focus point around. So whenever you put your eye to the camera, you actually just drag your thumb around on the LCD screen to move your focus point. That to me, right off the bat, I thought, I'm going to hate that. I'm going to miss the LCD screen. I'm going to end up just inching my, focus point on basically a grid system, whereas this, it's just completely fluid. No matter where I drag my thumb, it just moves the focus point flawlessly, and that is super, super useful. After a day of using it, now it's just so natural, and I don't even have to think about it, and I adapted to it a lot quicker than I really thought I would. Number 2, the dual pixel autofocus. That's something a lot of people always talk about with Canon cameras, and I've heard people talk about how great it is. Now, having used it for both photo and video, I can say it is amazing. It's super reliable, especially whenever I'm talking to myself. I can turn on face tracking or eye detect, and it works really, really great. I love it. Number 3, the RF glass. This is something that I've been kind of keeping an eye on just ever since the R was announced, because it seemed like Canon was pretty serious about the lenses they were putting out right out of the gate, one of them being this RF 50mm f1.2. This lens, for me, makes switching over to this system worth it. Just this one lens. I also have the 24-105 f4 kit lens, which is actually a really nice lens as well, and that's what I tend to use for a lot of these talking head kind of videos and vlogging, that kind of stuff. But this lens in general, this is what's on the camera 99% of the time, and this is probably my favorite lens I've ever owned. Any system, any focal length, film or digital, anything, I absolutely love this lens. And it is an expensive lens. It is a massive lens. It's basically a big paint can sitting on front of the camera, but it makes up for it entirely in terms of the results. It looks amazing. f1.2 is actually really sharp and usable, wide open, which you can't really do with most lenses this fast. There's usually a lot of softness, a lot of chromatic aberration. All of that is extremely minimal. This lens is just a killer. So those are a few of the things that made me want to try the camera out in the first place, but there were some other things that kind of surprised me that I'm actually really happy about as well, and one of them is the battery life. Coming from the Fuji system, I think I had a total of 8 batteries among my 2 main bodies, and I would go through at least half of those every single wedding day. With this camera, the first wedding that I shot was a pretty short day. It was only about 7 hours, but I didn't have to change a battery the entire day. I went home and I think I had maybe a third or a fourth of a battery left. That was pretty insane. The following wedding that I shot, I did end up changing the battery, but I only used 1 full battery and then maybe a third of the second battery, and that was, I think 9 to 10 hour day. So the battery life coming from Fuji, this was a big surprise to me. Whenever I bought the camera, I bought 2 extra batteries because I thought this is the bare minimum of what I'm probably going to need. Pleasantly surprised now. That third battery that I've bought, it's been in my camera bag. It hasn't even been in the camera once in the last month because I just haven't needed it. So not having to constantly worry about battery life, that has been amazing. The low light performance. The low light performance is great, not only in terms of the image quality, but also autofocus as well. On previous cameras that I've used, I would normally stick around 2,000, maybe 3,200 for, my really low light situations. With this camera, I realized I was kind of following that rule, and the autofocus was kind of struggling in some really dark situations because my ISO was at, 1,600. And after I bumped the ISO up and I gave that sensor a little bit more sensitivity to work with, it was just locking on focus, no problem. And at 6,400 ISO on the last wedding, shooting some of the photos at the reception, autofocus was super fast, the files are nice and clean. I've just been really, really happy with that, and it's just kind of given me a little bit more confidence in some of those low light situations you might find on a wedding day. The little screen that kind of flips down and guards the sensor whenever you turn the camera off and changing lenses, that's genius. I wish every mirrorless camera had that. That's sort of one of the disadvantages that you don't really think about, because with a mirrorless camera, you don't have that mirror to block the sensor whenever you're changing lenses, so oftentimes those sensors are just begging for dust if you're changing lenses out in the field, but I don't have to worry about with this. It's a simple thing, but still, it's peace of mind, so that's a positive. C-Log. Canon C-Log has been amazing to work with. It's super easy to color grade and color correct, and I've really enjoyed working with it, but more than anything, C-Log Assist. This has been such a game changer for me whenever I'm shooting log video, because I don't have to worry about not really being able to see my exposure or my focus properly, looking at this really flat, washed out image on the back of the LCD screen. Whenever you have C-Log Assist turned on, it's going to basically preview a standard picture profile on the back of the LCD, but it's actually recording internally C-Log, which is just amazing. It's so much easier to shoot log footage, especially outdoors and really bright situations. It's just been so convenient for me. So I've gone on and on about all the things I love about the camera, but what are some of the things that I'm really not crazy about? Well, for starters, the 4K video crop. It is frustrating, it's annoying. If you don't already know, if you're shooting 4K on this camera, it's going to crop in pretty significantly on the sensor, so you're not going to have that full frame sensor to really work with in 4K. You're going to get something closer to a crop sensor or Super 35 sensor, and with that, a lot of people worry about, missing that full frame look and things like that. For me, it's just about the lenses that I have. With my 24-105, if I throw that on here in 4K, I don't really have a 24-105 anymore. I'm losing a lot of that really wide frame. It can work to your advantage if you need something a little bit longer and it's going to punch in and give you some more reach, but I really never need that. For me, I really like being able to go a little bit wider when I can. So for that, I would have to get something significantly wider to compensate if I want to shoot in 4K. I have just been shooting everything with this camera in 1080, even here on YouTube, and I can upscale it to 4K, and people haven't even noticed. A lot of people actually have messaged me and said that the footage looks great, and they assume it's actually shot in 4K. It's just shot in 1080, and then I upscale it. But still, I would like to be able to shoot in 4K without having that crop, so maybe in the next camera. The one SD card slot. This is a big, big deal for a lot of people, especially wedding shooters like myself, although I've shot 2 weddings with this. I was a little bit nervous at first, I'm not gonna lie, but in all the years that I've shot with any digital cameras, I've never had an SD card fail on me. I obviously have to be mindful that I don't accidentally format the card or anything like that, but I would like to be able to just dual record every single frame on a wedding day, so that way I have an automatic backup. But I can't do that. It's just sort of a trade-off in my opinion. One thing I've been doing is sort of a don't keep all your eggs in one basket kind of thing, so I'm regularly switching out my SD cards. So I'll shoot a little bit for a while on one, I'll take it out and put in a fresh SD card. And I go through SD cards a lot quicker, and I'm not filling up all those SD cards necessarily, but still, in the slim chance that one of the SD cards fails and I lose everything on that card, maybe I have 5 SD cards and one of them fails, I'm losing 1/5 of the photos versus all of the photos. It's not a perfect situation, I get that, but still, it's a very slim chance that anything like that would happen. And you can also do things with like the Narbox or the Western Digital wireless SSDs, where you can back up on location with the SD card into an actual drive. Actually, Alex Barrera has a really, really good video about his workflow with that. He shoots weddings with the EOS R. He has a great video breaking down that whole system. I will link that down below. Definitely go check that out. It's super helpful. And finally, the in-body image stabilization, it's just not there. I wish it was. I would love to be able to shoot more handheld video and not get so much of that kind of jittery look. I just have to rely on lenses that have stabilization built in, but it doesn't have it in the body. Not much else to say about it other than that. I wish it did. Maybe in the next body. Those 3 things are honestly the only real drawbacks or things that I wish Canon would change or hopefully improve on in future cameras. Everything else I either really like or I'm just kind of indifferent towards. One of them being this little multi-touch trackpad, whatever the hell they call this thing, this little thing on the back of the camera. I get a lot of people really like it, I just don't really find myself using it. I have it set to my white balance, so if I do like a long press, it'll activate it, and then I can just slide this on the Kelvin scale to, fine-tune my white balance. I don't really use it, I've just found it to be a little bit quicker to just actually hit the quick menu on the touch screen and then just dial it in that way. It's just quicker and a little bit more intuitive rather than, holding in just the right position and waiting for it to activate. It just doesn't really work for me. It might for some other people. Another thing is this control ring. A lot of people really love the control ring that they've put on the new RF lenses, and even on some of the adapters for EF glass, it has a control ring built in, and you can program this to pretty much anything you want. Right now I have it programmed to ISO, but I have it set to where I have to hold in a button in order to activate it because I found myself accidentally adjusting it if I didn't really mean to. So for me, it's honestly just quicker to hold in one of the buttons on the camera that I've programmed and then just adjust it with this dial. Plus I can do that one-handed. I don't have to use both hands. I know a lot of people really like it. I don't hate it by any means. It's great for those people who find it useful. Yeah, it's just not for me, I guess. Also, the fact that it does come with an EF adapter is really nice, so if you're already a Canon shooter and you have a bunch of EF glass, you already have lenses that are compatible right out of the box with this camera, which is super nice. I actually just bought a 100mm macro Canon lens from my buddy Greg, who is also loaning me this 80D and Sigma 18-35 to record this video. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. I couldn't really talk much about the camera and not hold it. But anyway, I bought that 100mm macro lens from Greg, and that has worked flawlessly on the camera. I even rented the 35 f1.4 version 2 EF lens for the last wedding that we shot, and I was blown away by just how natural it felt on this camera. Autofocus was great. I didn't have any issues with anything at all using it. It just worked really great with this. So with an included adapter, you've already got plenty of access to other lenses, even if they haven't really been updated to the new RF mount. So that's really nice. Now, a couple of days ago on Instagram, I asked you guys to send in your questions about this camera for the review, so that way I could kind of answer any questions I maybe didn't already address on my own based on my own notes. So yeah, let's see what you guys had to say. My Playlot says, does it feel unbalanced given the large lenses and relatively small body? It's definitely front heavy, for sure. I've actually thought about picking up the grip at some point just because it would give me a little bit more weight on the back end of the camera, because especially with this lens, which this is a big lens, it's pretty front heavy. So it's not necessarily unbalanced, you know, to the point where it just feels awkward. I mean, it's still a comfortable camera to use. The ergonomics on this camera, the body itself, I actually like that it's a little bit bigger than most mirrorless bodies. After using the Fuji cameras for so many years, going to something like this that has a really good grip and really good ergonomics, I really prefer this over the Fuji bodies now. Just in terms of ergonomics alone, that for me has been really nice. But yeah, it's definitely a front-heavy system with some of these lenses for sure. Self-Taught Thought says, does any part of your face, nose, eyebrow, or fingers smudge, cramp, pinch, smear, or tweak things with the LCD screen? So yeah, with the LCD screen, like I mentioned earlier, it is a touch screen, so you can actually move your focus point around. For me, when I bring the camera up to my eye, nothing actually adjusts or messes with things here except for my thumb whenever I'm actually moving my focus point around. But I'm a right eye shooter. If you're a left eye shooter, that might be an issue for you because your whole face and your nose and everything is going to be kind of pushed into the camera. For me, I don't have to worry about that because I'm shooting with my right eye and it's kind of just everything is out of the way, and I've got a pretty big nose, so if I was a left eye shooter, that would probably be an issue, but for me, I haven't had that issue. Bahu Life says, for me, just your take on it in comparison to your Fuji gear. Handling, image quality, and lenses. Handling, I kind of talked about it a little bit already, but just the ergonomics, I really enjoy using this more than I did the Fuji cameras just because it gives me a much better grip. I really like the Fuji camera for their, you know, physical dials and sort of vintage styling. It was very similar to a lot of my film cameras. I liked all of that aspect of it, but now having gone to this, that extra grip and just a much more comfortable grip for me personally, that's definitely really nice. But everybody's hands are different sizes. You're going to have different opinions on that. But for me personally, I'm very glad that I have something like this now that's much more comfortable to use, especially on a long wedding day. Lenses, I've already sang praises on this lens here, and that kind of goes hand in hand with image quality. I'm going to be completely honest here. I used Fuji cameras for years in both personal and professional settings. I recommended them to people for years. I still recommend Fuji cameras, although I don't own any. They're terrific cameras. They're great to use. They're very enjoyable to use, and I was always happy with the photos. Always. That being said, the image quality with this camera and these lenses is far better than anything I ever got with any of my Fuji cameras and any of my Fuji lenses. And I had nice Fuji lenses there. I didn't just, you know, go with the cheapest lenses. I always bought their nicest lenses, which are great. But for whatever reason, whether it be, you know, this sensor, the glass in here, a combination of the two, the image quality on this combination is far better than the Fuji files. It just is. I know that's going to make a lot of Fuji shooters very angry and they're going to start just ranting in the comments, but I have to be honest here. I just have never seen this kind of quality and sharpness from any of my Fuji cameras and lenses compared to this Canon setup. That's just the honest truth. Tyler Woodford asks, did it meet your expectations if you had any before you purchased it? So my expectations with the camera were just that it would probably give me great image quality and that it would be really useful in some ways, like with the flip out screen for YouTube, things like that. Honestly, it's exceeded all of my expectations. Just usability and enjoying using the camera. I didn't expect to enjoy using it that much, but I really do love shooting with it. And on top of that, the image quality, it's blown me away. So yeah, I didn't really have like a high bar of expectations. I knew that it would be a very capable camera, I guess. Although it's lacking a lot of things for a professional's eyes, but still I thought it would be a good fit for me. But it's just far exceeded that, so I'm very happy with it. Danny Lebsock asked, do the Canon Colours live up to the hype for you? Yeah, for me, I've always heard a lot of things about Canon Color, and I'm not one of the people that will just shoot straight out of camera JPEGs and just post those. I'm still editing everything. I'm still shooting RAW for all of my photos. But the Canon Colours have been nice to work with. More than anything, I think that stands out to me is just the skin tones. They're not too red or overly saturated, which I really like. So yeah, it's not necessarily that I had issues with my Fuji files before, because I never really had issues doing any kind of editing with those. So it wasn't like I was looking for an improvement, but I really like the colors here, and yeah, the files are great to work with. If you can't tell, I absolutely love this thing, and just the RF lenses in general. I would definitely recommend it if you're on the fence about it, which right now actually they're on sale for like $500 off on just the body, and then the RF lenses as well are also on sale, several $100s off each. Not all of them, but most of them, including the kit lens and this 50mm f1.2. All of that is on sale right now. I don't know how long that's going to be on sale, but $500 off of this body is kind of too good to pass up. So if you're on the fence, I'm going to put links down below to the camera body, the lenses, the combo, all that stuff. Links will be down below. They are affiliate links, so although it doesn't cost you any extra money, it does go in to help the channel out if you are interested. But yeah, definitely check those out if you're interested in picking this camera up, because now would probably be a good time to do it. I kind of wish I would have maybe waited a month and then gotten a little bit more money saved, but still, well worth it. I'm excited to see new bodies being added to the R system. If they come out with some sort of a flagship 1DX style R camera that has maybe some of the things that this one is lacking, the in-body image stabilization, the 4K without that big crop, dual card slots, if it has those kind of things, then I would probably just go ahead and buy that like day one. I would probably keep this as sort of the secondary camera, and then just upgrade to that body for my main camera body, but still, this is a very, very capable camera despite the things that it's lacking. No camera is perfect. I did a video just a few weeks ago about that. You can check that out, but still, it's not a perfect camera, but I'm really enjoying using it. They also just came out with the RA, which is an R somehow made just for astrophotography. Not really my thing, but that's out there. If you're into shooting the stars, then they've got a camera just for you, apparently. But yeah, the R system has just been awesome to work with. So I'm excited to see what bodies they come out with, as well as all the new lenses they have coming up as well. So those are my thoughts and results after a month of shooting with the EOS R. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this down in the comments below. But also, if you'd like to check out some of the files from this camera, I'm going to put links down below where you can download some of the raw files that I've shot. Everything from a low ISO to high ISO and mixed lighting scenarios, just so that way you guys can actually download the files, pixel peep, edit, play around with them, just kind of get a feel for the image quality. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys, so there are links down below. But again, I'd love to hear what you have to say about all of this in the comments down below. Next week we have a pretty cool video, Leica versus Voigtlander. I've got two lenses, same focal length, same maximum aperture, with a $1,000 difference between the two. So I'm excited for you guys to see just how different are they really for $1,000. That's going to be a fun one. But that's it for today. So I want to thank you guys for everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.